Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Farmer, if you did not know that already. Today I will be presenting a construction site explosion in Kansas City, Missouri. Quick summary about the event. So, it occurred about 32 years ago on November 29th, 1988. The fire originated from a trailer fire at a rock blasting construction site. They were blasting a whole bunch of limestone off the side of a highway right outside of Kansas City. So the first trailer which caught fire was holding 20,000 pounds of a mixture of ammonium nitrate and fuel oil. Within that mixture, there was also a whole bunch of aluminum pellets. I'm not quite sure why, but there was. Anyway, there was also another trailer not too far from the trailer holding 20,000 pounds that originally caught on fire. This second trailer was holding 30,000 pounds of this mixture. And eventually they both ended up exploding. And the end result was the deaths of two fire captains, four additional firefighters. All of the vehicles and firefighting equipment was destroyed, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but five people were sentenced to life in prison after this event. The emergency response of this event could have been better, but it was 32 years ago, so things have changed a whole lot since then, fortunately. But the first responders to this fire was the Kansas City Fire Department. All they knew is that they were responding to a trailer fire in a construction site. They weren't really sure, what the cause of the fire was or what kind of chemicals were on the site. The only information that they were able to obtain, because they did not have jurisdiction over the site, just because it was right outside of Kansas city limits and it was off the side of a state freeway. The only information that they could obtain was that there was explosives on the site. They didn't know what type of explosives were there or the danger that they presented. Also, the U.S. Treasury Department's Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the ATF, at the time, they only required placarding for trailers and explosives while they were in transportation, but once they were parked on a construction site, they no longer required the placards to be on the trailers. So this kind of led into the fire department's, lack of exposure to what chemical they were dealing with, and it eventually led to the explosion and their unfortunate deaths. Next, the investigation. There was an investigation of this event, and it was conducted by the Department of Homeland Security as well as the U.S. Fire Administration. In this investigation, I posted it as a source at the end of this PowerPoint, but in this investigation, it states that the U.S. Fire Administration only conducts reports and investigations of events which have mass casualties, mass property damage, or if there is immense lessons learned from the event, which there was in this case, which is why they were the ones conducting the investigation. But they did not list any root causes, weirdly enough, in their investigation. So I kind of read through what they found and I came up with some root causes on my own. But the trailer fire was started by arsonists, so that is why five people were sentenced to life in prison after this event. The arsonists were some drug addicts. There were five of them, and they set the trailer on fire to create a diversion so that they could come onto the construction site and steal tools so they could sell the tools for drugs. They had no idea what was in the trailers, and they had no idea that it was going to cause an explosion, but it did. That's why they are in prison. I actually found this information through a recent article. It was an article about one of the arsonists is now trying to get out of prison after 30 years. That is a whole different thing in itself. There's a whole lot of theories about whether these arsonists were actually at fault or if they're innocent and they're serving time they shouldn't be in prison from this event. But that's a whole different thing with it himself. Anyway, the trailer did not have placards. That is my second root cause. So the firefighters had no idea what kind of chemical or explosive they were dealing with, and so they didn't really know how to approach the fire. Whether to evacuate or to fight the fire. Which in the end, they made the decision to fight the fire, which probably should not have occurred. And lastly, the firefighters did not know what hazardous materials were on site. And the locations of the hazardous materials, the only information they knew was that there was explosives. They didn't know if the explosives were in the trailer or not. And since then, these lessons have been learned. It's part of the investigation, figuring out what they can fix after this event so it doesn't occur again. Next, Kansas City changes. So some regulations that were formed after this event are that the city of Kansas City, they require their city engineer office to communicate a little bit better about with the U.S. Fire Marshal or the city fire marshal about any blastings that may be occurring in the city or around city limits. Next, they have developed a document that just identifies the quantity and type of the explosive material. So the fire department knows exactly how much and of what they are dealing with when they approach a fire. Next, this document also describes the type of storage facilities. So what are these hazardous materials stored in? And lastly, the document requires a copy of the SDS sheet for the material. And the last Kansas City change that was made was the city um, has the applicant, so whoever is applying for a permit to transport and use these explosives, they require a plot diagram just showing the locations of this hazmat. So if something does go wrong, the fire department or the first responders know exactly where the hazard is. Lessons learned. So these are coming straight from the U.S. Fire Administration's investigation. You can read through these. I'm not going to go through all six, but these are the six lessons learned. The one that I kind of was most enamored by was that the construction company had 50,000 pounds of this ammonium nitrate and fuel mixture on their site at one time. But the lesson learned was that maybe that's not the best idea because this stuff is highly explosive. It's highly hazardous. It presents a huge danger, as we saw with the unfortunate deaths of 6 firefighters. But the crazy thing is, the manufacturer for this mixture was only an hour drive away from the site. So the U.S. Fire Administration just kind of recommended maybe keeping a less amount of this stuff on site and transporting it as needed from the manufacturers. So it's not just a huge lump sum of this, hazardous material at one place at one time. I'd like to finish up just, bringing attention to that the deaths of these firefighters and this memorial that was set up in their honor. It is on the side of the freeway in which they were killed on. There are 6 crosses to resemble the 6 of their lives. And lastly is just my references. And that will about wrap it up. Looking forward to reading your guys' replies to this presentation. Thank you.